Betty, lead us off.
Yay. Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm Betty Montgomery, a member of Northeast Quadrant and Board of Directors of WEMS and NEQ. I come here on behalf of the board to thank you all for your consideration of a resolution for provision of emergency funding, which will aid the NEQ as it continues to provide hometown ambulance services in the town. This funding will in short term assist NEQALS as it continues its 35-year commitment to providing emergency medical services, and until a sustainable long-term solution is agreed upon. We would also like to thank the town board for diligently working over the past 2 years with NEQ to find a way to organize and fund a sustainable model EMS ambulance service in this town. In addition, we'd like to thank town board member John Cahill for his continued support of EMS in the town as the town board's liaison to the NEQALS Board of Directors. In addition, John is a member of the multidisciplinary expert committee that is currently working on a sustainable solution to provide hometown ambulance services in the town of Webster, even as revenue continues to dwindle and costs continue to rise. We would also like to thank Webster's Director of Finance, Paul Adams, for taking the time to recently spend weeks with us, 2 weeks, reviewing our financial records, questioning and the billing information and the annual audits. I'm sure he's providing competent counsel and guidance to the town as they will make decisions that will affect the lives and safety of the residents and visitors to the town of Webster. Again, we wish to thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you, Betty.
Thank you.
Next up tonight is former town supervisor, Ron Nesbitt.
What did I do?
Good evening, thank you. First off, Supervisor, I think you got the meeting a little backwards here tonight. First, you're asking for comment from the public before the Director of Finance or Russ makes their presentation. So how can I speak to those topics now when I haven't been informed of what they are? I think that's a little backwards. You should have had open to the floor at the end of the meeting so the presentations could be heard. So I'm off the cuff tonight on what I'm going to say because I don't know what the presentations are. So I stand before you this evening to ask this town board why you think it's okay to give away another $60,000 of taxpayer dollars to a private company who hasn't proven themselves since you gave them over $200,000 in July of 2022. Since that time, they have not taken numerous calls for services, dropped patients off of gurneys on 2 separate occasions, have failed to comply with the planning board for proper landscaping and sign approvals, and the fact that they now are behind in their gas payments to the town of Webster as they were when I was supervisor 4 years ago. So nothing has changed, but their constant stall tactics to provide financials to the Webster community and their outright threats to the Webster community that they're going to close down. What other private company in Webster gets their gas in town's cost, and then they don't pay the bill on time to the taxpayers of Webster? Can you tell the taxpayers of any other company that is doing that right now, I ask? If and when this private enterprise might go out of business, as they stated recently in the recent letter from their attorney to the town board's attorney, we the taxpayers are going to get stuck eating that gas bill. I wouldn't give them $60,000 right now until they pay the gas bill, whatever that might be. Take the gas payment out of the $60,000 if that's your decision right now. Would you do business, would you continue to do business, Mr. Cahill, if you didn't pay your bills? Remember, in just 18 days, they will be back for their $50,000 that this town board has approved for them in 2024. This has nothing to do with employed EMTs or paramedics who do great work. This has to do with leadership and the Board of Trustees. They haven't been forthcoming to the Webster residents in town, and they had the audacity to send out a mailer this past week asking for donations for 3 new ambulances and a generator that they didn't put in their new building. On top of that, they want more tax dollars from you, or us, the taxpayers. Any disclosure on how much money they make off this donation mailer? How do we know that some of this money isn't being siphoned off for other things? Any accountability here? It's a private company, we're not going to know. But yet you're going to give them $60,000 more tonight? It's time this town board stopped kicking a can down the road and voided the existing ambulance contract and go out to RFP and find a competent ambulance company to service Webster. Stop with all these committees and make a decision now before this board turns over. All this nonsense that Penfield Ambulance can't handle their calls and take care of Webster is hogwash. You control the CON, so do what's right for Webster, because Nichols has proven themselves incompetent to do the job. On one other point before I go, when I was supervisor, the town board and myself spent a lot of money, taxpayer dollars, in building this room and the AV and the audio that's in this room. The meetings since the cable director has left have been left to be desired, less than be desired. If you watched the zoning board meeting the other night, you couldn't hear the sound. As Mr. Walravich said, you can't see the speaker at the podium because you got a Facebook Live. Facebook Live, that's all you got. You don't have anything else. And it's pathetic. You haven't gone out yet to hire you haven't posted for a new audio or video technician that can run this, and you should be doing that because it's not proper for the residents of Webster.
Well, I hate doing it, but for 4 years I've given this gentleman the benefit of the doubt. He's at 6 minutes now, so Ron, where are we at?
You were at 6 minutes?
Yeah.
I'm done. I just want to say.
That's great.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
I'm finished, just
Thank you very much.
if you were notified.
And next up tonight is Dan Cody.
Good evening, everyone. After 20 years as a buyer in the business world, I learned that a contract is a contract. If I was buying a service or a product from a supplier, and then that supplier said they needed more money, I would tell them to go read the contract. If they couldn't fulfill the terms of the contract, they would be in default, and the contract would become null and void. Then I would go out and look for someone else to supply that same service or product. The taxpayers of Webster should not finance a private company beyond the agreed terms, just because they have a contract with the town. Poor planning, management, or poor business plan on the part of Weems is not financial responsibility of the Webster taxpayers. If additional funds are to be handed out, will their finances become public knowledge as quickly as they accept these taxpayer dollars? If Weems is crying poverty, do the taxpayers of Webster have the right to know how their money is being spent? What are the salaries of their management? If additional public funds are handed out, what will guarantee that another begging does not come again in 6 months? If the Webster Herald is correct, their charter states that they will not be supported by public funds. Will the acceptance of public funds put their charter and then in violation? And will the town of Webster be an accomplice to that charter default? As I said earlier, a contract is a contract. It is an equation that must be kept equal and fair to both sides. I say, let the contract default and put EMS out to bid again. This time, let's be more careful, transparent, while keeping the faith and the trust of the citizens of Webster. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. And last tonight, I hope is it Kevin Rand?
Yep.
Kevin Rand.
Good evening. $4 million. Since the town and NEQ will not disclose finances, that's what I figured the contracted value is for ALS and BLS. So where did I come up with that? Before being replaced, Union Hill had about 2,300 calls for service a year. Add about another 2,000 calls a year for service for West Webster. That's from 4,300 calls for service that NEQ takes annually. Town supervisor told us in an open meeting that he paid $1,800 for an ambulance ride during an open town board meeting. Say the average reimbursement is half that. $900 at 4,300 calls a year is $4 million. Payroll. 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, a crew of 2 making $25 an hour costs $4,500 per $450,000 per ambulance. Mind you, that's with minimal overtime. If they have 3 ambulances on staff, that's $1.35 million for payroll. Add another $500,000 for overhead, fuel, etc. That comes up to $2 million. Where's the other $2 million? Town keeps saying that NEQ operates a town ambulance. They don't. They operate an ambulance in the town. The town doesn't own the ambulances, the equipment, the building, or take care of payroll. NEQ is a contractor. Treat them as such. If the money is given to NEQ, this will be the second time they have reneged on a contract. 6 months ago, you told us that you told them to shape up or ship out. Now we're going to throw them another $60,000. If we pay this money, are we still going to have to pay their third-party bills, our insurance and our co-pays? Or is our tax money not paying for this service? When was the last time the town board reviewed how much NEQ is billing the residents of this town for this ambulance service in your name? Union Hill used to do it all the time. Get a blank rate sheet from FedEx and compare the rates that they were billing the residents of this town to what other agencies were billing to make sure they're on par. When was the last time you guys did that? Have we reached out to others? Penfield, CHS, Monroe. Monroe just lost Wyoming County. I'm sure they could have an ambulance sitting out at 1000 Ridge Road, an ALS ambulance, within a week. During the election, I saw political signs out wanting to replace the town supervisor by NEQ, save EMS in this town. Who paid for those? Our tax money paid for that? Our third-party invoice paid for that? So instead of shaping up and shipping out like you asked them to, they wanted to replace the town board. Let's not fix the EMS side of it, let's replace who's asking them to fix.
Thanks, Ken. Okay, well, that concludes the public speaking.
Can I ask just a couple of quick questions?
You got it. Dave Walker.
I'm confused. Is this money for Northeast Advanced Life Support or WIMS? That's the first question. The second question is, where is this $60,000 coming from? I don't believe I saw the budget for 2023. So I guess I'd like to know where we're getting this money. Thanks.
Okay, I'm gonna go back to what I said at the beginning. If you have anything to say, it's the podium. Because once we move on with presentations and discussion, the time is for saying, I want to be sensitive to the situation. Dave, that's why you got a chance to do an audible. You didn't sign in. I asked you if you wanted to talk. You said,
Thank you.
we gave you the audible. I want to make this very clear. The audibles are over. Everybody all set? Russ Siskill, as he walks up to the podium to give his 2 to 3 minutes, he's a lot more succinct than me, so I'm sure he'll accomplish that. I'm going to just give you a brief update on this gentleman's resume. Russ has lived in Webster for about 10 years now. Russ is an extremely successful starter of businesses, building them up, selling them, and starting more businesses. And I'm talking about businesses in IT, security, things outside of EMS. But Russ also is the chairman of the board and the CEO of Northern Onondaga Volunteer Ambulance, Nova in Clay, New York. And that ambulance that he has run for the last 30 years, even after he moved from that area to here, they realized his value and have kept you, reluctantly on your part in some ways, in that position. And I've always said this about a business: you don't luck your way into success. Russ, are you still the only ambulance company in Onondaga County that does not give government subsidy from the town?
Or one other.
Oh, okay. I thought you told me that you were the only one. There is one other. War Chest of Reserves, very well-run company, and I think that's why it's in the shape that it's in today, which is very good. Sorry if I went overboard. I probably spent more minutes telling you about you than you'll talk about what I've asked you to present.
So as Tom said, my name is Russ Siskill, and first and foremost, I'm a resident of the town of Webster, so my interests in EMS are selfish. I live like this. We need an ambulance one day. I want a qualified ambulance to come from not too far away. So as I knew the folks at Equals and I knew the folks from the town board and started hearing about the issues, I said I'd be happy to get involved and volunteer my time to see if I can help out. So what I came up with and what we wound up doing is I put together a committee of people. There's a few people from the Equals team, but it's about 50 or 60% of the people are not. So it's a 12-person committee that has people from other ambulance corps in Monroe County, billing folks, accounting folks, operations folks from other ambulance companies to help take a look and see, and to answer some of the questions here, or I think some of those questions will be answered from what we're working on. We're working on presenting the town with a very Webster-centric view, right? You guys have heard that there's, that there's some contracts that service other towns. That's not what we're here to talk about. A very Webster-centric view. But what did NEQ look like years ago when they were financially solvent? How did it get here? A lot of financial detail in our presentation to the town, and show them where the changes occurred, which, as many of you could guess, were right around 2020, and what the income versus expense shortfalls are. And so we're working together to not only look at that financial picture and explain to the town, here's exactly what EMS service is costing, here's exactly what it's bringing in, here's that shortcoming without regard to other issues and other things. Here's some of the maybe potential operational or management changes that may be available to help with these things. And then and we've got a group of experts that we're working with, very engaged. I can tell you I'm very excited, as I've been on so many committees and throughout life, as I'm sure many of you have. And it's a very engaged group of people that have no bias. I mean, there's folks from other agencies and other places. I mean, the ones from Monroe County are certainly interested in seeing a successful EMS system for the whole county, and so they've got that in their hearts as well. So we'll be we're putting that together. We meet a couple times a week, the past couple weeks, and we're going to continue to do that for the next couple weeks and have something for the town here right after the beginning of the year to present to them, and whether it's in this form or not, that'll be up to you guys, but that's what we're doing.
And I just want to say that Russ was kind enough to jump in and help us with this. Would it be safe to say that the charge of this ad hoc committee is to construct an operations/business plan for neat walls to present to the town board and propose funding of that operations business plan for consideration by the town board?
I think that's a good summary.
Okay. And the original deadline we had discussed was November 1st.
December 1st.
It was November 1st before it became very robust with some talented people on that. Once you were able to garner the first meeting, it wasn't until November 9th because of some of the people. So you had asked for an extension to December 1st. But then where you were at with it, and I totally understood, to put together the right research from the people that are on this committee. You said it's a very engaged committee. They're working. They are good insight. That when you think that will be ready to present to the board is sometime probably in early to mid-January.
Correct.
Okay.
That's exactly
All right.
right.
Thanks, Russ. Paul, and then
All right, Tom.
Bridget, if you could, Paul's presentation, you see page 1 of it, it's a 3-slider, 3 slides, 3 screenshots. Bridget is handing out these 3 slides. Take them home with you. Paul, I'll hand it to you. Paul is our finance director at the town of Webster. And also a new member to that Green Team committee, that Russ. Yes, which I'm happy to hear.
All right, based on the cash flow analysis that I completed within the past couple of weeks, as you know, the town board's here to consider some emergency funding for Naples. The cash flow analysis included a look at a number of financial trends within Naples. This included estimated incoming cash. I took a look at a rolling 12 months of data from basically from November 1st of 22 through October 31st of 23, which was provided by the billing company, Logical Billing Solutions. Considered the incoming cash from the Richmond Fire District contract, which is about $350,000 a year. I took a look at payroll and employee benefit costs. The average payroll, including payroll taxes and the 401k match, is about $75,000 every 2 weeks. The vendor payments, which would be your non-payroll and your non-debt service payments, average about $73,000 a month. Just point out that this does include healthcare costs, which is basically an employee benefit. The debt payments were based on actual amounts due, actual payments that are presently due for the month of November of 23. This includes various debts, such as the bank credit line, they have a mortgage on the building, there's an SBA loan, there's a couple vehicle and equipment loans as well. That altogether, it's about $15,000 per month. So basically, the scenario outlined has Webster contributing $60,000 in the month of December, and then we're considering moving the $50,000 contractual payment to January. Historically, that's been made in the middle of February. We usually wait till some amount of the tax money flows in, but in this case, we can move it up a month. The next slide gives you a view of the financials on an annual basis. Based on the numbers that I put together, you can see that their estimated incoming cash from services is about $1.8 million per year. Richmond contract's about $350,000. The town of Webster contributes $50,000 per our contract. And contributions, I have at $50,000. Could be more than this. 22, I think it was closer to about $148,000, but I was conservative. On the expense side, you've got your payroll, employer 401k match and FICA, it's about $1.9 million. Your vendor payments is about $876,000, and your debt payments is about $180,000. So as you can see, the incoming cash is falling short of the outgoing cash by a significant amount. It's about $712,000 short on an annual basis. So it's a monthly cash burn rate and a monthly shortage of about $59,000. So basically, under this scenario of Webster contributing $60,000 in December, I assume that Nichols would be probably borrowing about $40,000 on their credit line in December. So they probably finished up this year with a cash balance of about $59,000, but a credit line balance due of about $126,000. For the month of January, with the $50,000 contractual payment from Webster, I assume that they would also borrow probably about $20,000 on the credit line. I'm projecting that they'll finish January with cash for about $30,000 and a credit line balance of about $146,000. So the next steps, in a few minutes, the town board will be considering the resolution on the $60,000. In January, we'll make the $50,000 payment. And as Russ pointed out, the committee is working on a business plan, which hopefully we'll see that within the next few weeks. So at this point, I think we turn it over to the board to consider the resolutions or to comment.
So as part of your analysis, Paul, you took a look at the Richmond contract, because I know that from a profit and loss, there was a disparity between your analysis and what details was reporting. There was a significant difference, correct?
On Richmond, yes. We found that the payroll was actually from within their payroll provider was not being classified properly, so there was payroll that was not labeled as Richmond, and it really was Richmond. So we actually got this straightened out, got the real payroll numbers in there compared to the revenue, and it looks like it's losing a little bit of money or close to break even for the year, so it's
Right. So I think the number was not, it wasn't a small amount of money that they were losing compared to what they were reporting from a profitability standpoint. So, I mean, that's one thing that we look at also from a profit and loss standpoint. And in any business that has different divisions, in my opinion, each division should be treated as a profit and loss center, so you're not commingling funds, and you know which one is making money, which one is not making money, right?
right.
So that, I mean, I'm sure that's going to be part of the business model discussions. And so I appreciate you taking a deep dive into that.
Well,
And I will also just going to comment that the 60,000 is not going to be 60,000 every month to cover the losses. The intent, in my opinion, my understanding, is to get detailed lens through the next couple of payrolls while we finish up this business model, make the presentation, make some suggestions, and if the board accepts them, then this board will make some decisions regarding funding moving forward. That's what I have.
John, you're aware, and I told Tom and I told the rest of the board, I'm not in favor of giving money to this organization until they get things straightened out. Now, Paul's gone and looked at their financials. He shows that they're running short. Is it all because of billing, or is it all because there's some management issues as well?
There is, in my opinion, some management issues also, but not of the ranking file.
So I have concerns about this additional funding. If they have to stay afloat and keep the business there, I probably would vote for it. I'm leaving the board, and I want the board to know as I leave that I would not do any additional funding in the following year in 2024 until things are straightened out with this company, or go out to RFP for a new company. That's just my
You
position.
know, and I don't disagree with you. There's some significant changes that need to be made. We will make some recommendations, and then it will be up to their board to make some decisions. And if they make the proper decisions, in my opinion, it will be positive for the funding.
I have a concern that even when we get the report, which I understand the committee has been working diligently on, and I really appreciate all the work that every member has been doing. The concern is that once we get that report in mid-January, this is not going to turn around by mid-February or the end of February, maybe not even March. I'm concerned it won't turn around in the first quarter. And if we continue to see the losses and the dipping into the credit line, I'm afraid we're going to be doing this every month until the end of April. And I can't support that.
Well, this has been a very delicate issue for many months. And I believe that as a town board, we have been trying to find a good solution for our EMS. And we want to make the best decision to benefit everyone in town. Some may go for it and some may not go for it. But I'm praying at the end of the day, we all come together as a community to support one another. I know that New York State Legislature had just passed the direct pay bill this year, and Governor Kathy Hochul just signed into law a few weeks ago, and this will help the ambulance services by getting the pay directly from the insurance instead of to pay to the patient. So hopefully that would, get them more money. But, like I said, whatever decision we have made, we're going to be making, it's not going to be an easy decision, and it's what's best for our community, for everybody that we're trying to get this a solution.
I can appreciate that, but again, I go back to the timing because I know the governor passed that, but I'm also aware that that funding won't come through until January of 2025.
Well, okay, I think it's fair at this point, and I've said at the beginning of this, and I'll call the beginning of this July 28, 2022. It was 18 months ago, and one of the leaders of NEQUAL stood on that podium at a workshop and did a presentation, suggested, I'll call it suggested, the town of Webster needs to look at a tax district by January 1st, 2023 for EMS. And it was initially shown as 800,000. Debated over the last 18 months, was that a real ask, or was he just using a number for discussion? Doesn't really matter. That's what was shown. A week later, on August 3rd, regular town board meeting, regular format. Nothing was on the agenda for EMS, but 20 people took that podium at the open to the public for 5 minutes. Most of them board members or employees or people that had ambulance rides, I'll call it, or medical service by NEQUAL, fully in support of this. And at that board meeting on August 3rd, I said, look, our job as the town board, my job as the town supervisor, probably, you could argue that the number one duty of our job is the fiduciary responsibility of the taxpayers' money. So we can't hand $800,000 over to this company. We have to enter into due diligence discernment. That's what I said. That's what I said we were going to do. And to really try to make sure that we do as we say and we say as we do. And what has happened over the last 18 months, in my opinion, and I'm not a young man, I've been in business, I've been involved in a lot of negotiations. I've seen a lot of negotiating styles. I've had the pleasure and also the challenge the last 18 months in parallel that Coca-Cola Fairlight has been one very interesting company to tangle with on negotiation. Would that be a good way to describe it? They are a very sophisticated negotiating entity. And you better bring your A game and you better be on top of things. And I'm going to tell you this, in the parallel to that, I'll call this a negotiations between the town and Nequals, the town leadership and Nequals leadership. And after 18 months, I honestly can't tell if on one end of the spectrum, the Nequals leadership is the most sophisticated, tough negotiators I've ever dealt with, or on the other end of the spectrum, if they're the most tone-deaf, delusional negotiators I've ever dealt with. I don't know. But I'm going to just tell you this, and I'll let everybody make their decision for them. You'll make your own decision. It's a subjective question, really. Is it sophisticated, or is it tone-deaf delusion? The one constant that the town board, I think, or at least I have hung on the last 18 months, is it is a non-starter to give that company money unless there are changes. It's very simple. If there are no changes, there is no money. I don't think there was any mincing of words on that in what I've written and what I've said. And what I've experienced with either the sophisticated or tone-deaf other side is that, one, when we first sent out our list of things we wanted in the due diligence discernment process to see if we should have the taxpayers of Webster become essentially partners with Nequals, because if we're giving them that kind of money, in my world, that's like us being, the taxpayers being a 30-40% stockholder of Nequals. If you're going to buy that kind of stock in a company, you should have access to every single iota of information. And what we were met with, and unfortunately Paul, being the point person for the town, was a series of stonewalling of either, you don't need that information, that's really none of your business because we're a private company. And that cascaded to the famous non-disclosure agreement that I've been pounded by certain people that I signed in November, because to be honest with you, I got tired of the stonewalling and I said, Charlie, I've done a lot of NDAs, they're kind of as good as the paper they're on. If that'll give the comfort level to the either sophisticated negotiators or the tone-deaf ones to give over that information so the town board can make an informed decision, I'll sign it. And I did. And the unfortunate part is that maybe I got out-negotiated by a sophisticated leadership in Nequals, because I really don't think they opened up the coffers of all the information. They just came up with different stonewalls of why we didn't need the information. That NDA has been referenced many times over the months by the Nequals leadership. The next thing really that I tried to do was go, I'm kind of a face-to-face guy. I asked the leader of Nequals on February 23rd last year, 23, can I meet with you? I'll come over to your office. And I did. I went over to meet with him on a Friday afternoon, February 23rd, out in Mustafa. And I said, I've known you a long time, our kids went to school, this and that. I don't want to mince words. There will be no, I can't speak for the town board, but I cannot endorse and vote for any money to Nequals unless it's tied to tangible changes. Organizational structure, leadership, the core model of how they're run. he seemed to take it very graciously. We had a nice half-an-hour discussion. After that, and I'm a big person who likes to say, and this is funny because I talk a lot, all right, Irish guy. But I say all the time, don't listen to what they say, watch what they do. And this is what I have seen, the very sophisticated leadership, negotiations, or tone deaf, you'll have to decide. Since then, there has been 3 formal things in writing that have been submitted over to the town board or to the attorney representing the town board from the NEPAWS leadership. Each one, a resolution from the NEPAWS board in May of 2023, and then 2 amended contract proposals in September of 2023. Each one had the following common denominators: 40 to 45,000 a month of money from the town to NEPAWS, but no changes. Now, I'll give them credit in the sophisticated way they did it. The one in May was a resolution that had a lot of whereas, specifically stating we don't need to change. We have great leadership, great structure. We are the leader in the clubhouse of how to run an ambulance company. They did back off on that in their amended contracts, written things in September, where they basically said, we'll talk to you after we get this done about some metric measurements and things of that nature. And we want a 5-year extension. Those are in the 2 amendments too. So we're going to get the 5-year contract from the end of 25 to the end of 30. Now, at the same time, we've had multiple threats in writing, if you want to call it a threat, that if we don't get money tomorrow or next week, we're going to go out of business.
Right.
The first one we got was in April. I must be dumb, I take things seriously. If somebody tells me they're going to go out of business, in my world of business, I have to take that seriously. Well, I am the supervisor of the town. I said, we need to have a contingency plan. So within a couple of weeks, we put a contingency plan together, and on May 25th, we presented at a town board workshop 7 short-term options for EMS in Webster. And the 7th one was switching over to Penfield Volunteer Ambulance. Now, this infuriated the NEPAWS leadership and threw gas in the fire of how they hate me personally, this and that. And I'm like, I can sleep at night because I would have never put that as an option. But a month and a half earlier, leadership, sophisticated or tone deaf, sent in writing that we're going to go out of business if we don't get that money. What do you want your supervisor and town board to react at that point? How are we supposed to react? It's a dereliction of duty if we don't put a contingency plan on it. I'm almost done, but I think this is fair because the community, and rightly so, in the last 18 months, we've been hamstrung by non-disclosure agreements. We've been hamstrung by a lot of things. But I go back to that term negotiation. As my predecessor will tell you, there's reasons you go into executive session as a town board. And one of them is when you're doing negotiations that it would be detrimental to the town representing the taxpayers to an open forum start talking about the ifs and thens and whatever. This town board has been in more executive sessions in the last year on this EMS issue than any other issue, by far, by far. So in a lot of ways tonight, and I always said this, I said this to leadership of NEPAWS, I'll play nice in the sandbox on this NDA, but as soon as money is being expended, I've tried to tell you the rules of engagement as far as I'm concerned. That's when confidentiality of your private company starts to dribble away, and eventually almost all of it will all be gone when you're getting 40% of your budget, if that's what ends up happening from the town. I tried to tell that to the leadership of NEPAWS, and either they, from a sophisticated negotiation standpoint or tone deaf, I don't think they've ever acknowledged that that is the path that this would go if the town starts to subsidize EMS. we tried to keep things confidential. But it's a world where things leak. And my predecessor, Mr. Nesbitt, put out on his social media page, and there's only a few people that got this memo, that the attorney for Nequals on November 20th sent to the attorney for the town, you give us $221,000 by Friday, December 8th, for those keeping track, that's 6 days ago, or we're filing our 30-day notice to go out of business. The thing that has, once again, sophisticated, maybe this is just master's level, doctorate level negotiation that I'm not, it's above my pay grade. Or it's tone deaf, delusional, overplaying your hand. I could go on and on. I don't know which one it is. I'm just telling you what's happened over the last 18 months. How did this meeting come about? Well, our last executive session on December 7th, a week ago, I was confused and said, well, Charlie, you're our attorney. We've asked them twice, the leadership and the attorney, are you going to supersede your letter of November 20th? Because I got you sitting here that if we get to December 8th and we don't give you $221,000, you're going out of business. And I don't have a path to give you $221,000. This board would have to vote on it. We owe it to the public to do a presentation and all that. I don't have a path to that. We were in executive session an hour plus. I can't get into a lot of details, but I can tell you what spawned off of it. You're at it. Paul did that research, 60 grand a month. All right, it's really simple then. We'll queue up an emergency funding for 60 grand, because that's what they're short from his, and I trust Paul. I think everybody that deals with him, he's got the numbers right.
Yes, he does.
And like you said, then in January, we already contractually in our budget in 2024 are giving them $50,000. So we could just, that's how we could shore up that. And give that committee that Russ is running some time to put together a plan that is a good plan for 2021 and beyond, and not fast track it because we need it fast. Now I know that was a very long monologue, wasn't it? All right? Now I've written notes and I've thought about this, and I've really struggled with this the last couple of days. And it all comes back to this, and I thought about it on some things that happened in the last few days. And I go back to what I said. Watch what they do, not what they say. Russ and John and the people on that committee, I really think are going to put together a phenomenal plan. I really do. We won't kill the messenger. I think you're already getting an idea that the plan is going to cost a lot of money. All right? There's no magic pill that's going to change this, as you said, Patty, overnight. But they'll give a plan. The problem is, foundational to the plan, and it's always been said this way, there has to be major changes. And we've actually given the committee what some of the changes need to be, or it's a non-starter. And I really believe, now I'm going to play negotiator here, okay? And I said, it doesn't really matter if they're sophisticated or they're tone deaf. I think of the Godfather, it was, he's either in on it or he's oblivious. Either way, he's got to go. Wasn't that Charlie Knack's your type? Isn't that the line? Well, it doesn't matter whether they're incredibly sophisticated and they've outflanked me in every negotiation the last 18 months, or if they're tone deaf and delusional. Giving them this $60,000, in my mind, is going to make that leadership of what they've done the last 18 months potentially have that committee, after all their work and all the talent, come into that Nequals board and leadership and say, here's what we want to present to the board. Now you guys need to endorse it. And I can see that Nequals board saying, we're not endorsing it. We're a private company. They don't tell us what to do. And then we got a real problem. Because now we've given them $60,000, which is to me throwing good money after bad. And they might be emboldened thinking, see, if we hung on long enough, they'll give us money for no changes. Because you can powder perfume the pig any way you want on December 14th. If we give them the money today, we gave them the money with no changes. Because a plan for changes, which Russ, in good faith, I think you and John lead that committee and have something. But is this another boy who cried wolf? I've already had in April, we're gonna be out of business if we don't get this money. Nequal's board, we've asked, you said 2/21 or you're out of business. They did not file being out of business. So what is that?
So,
Was that a sophisticated or a tone-deaf negotiation thing with a deadline and ultimatum? So is $60,000, is that even gonna do it for you?
hey, Tom, can I interject for a minute, please? Because we're getting
Guess
a
what?
little bit redundant.
Not only can you interject, that's how I
I
feel
will
about this.
add to your statements my strong opinion and position that after all the hours that have been put in and will be, continue to be put in to put this business plan together and recommendations made to the Nicole's board, if those recommendations are rejected and their changes that we're putting forward are not accepted, I cannot even tell you how incredibly disappointed I will be. And I will not vote for one more dollar of taxpayer money.
Now, if that happens, John, and we're judged on what we do
Right.
as the town board, we have no defense. We just got out-sophisticated
You're
or
absolutely,
caved in,
yes, you're
shown never
right.
lose.
You are
The
correct.
60 grand's gone,
You're
gone.
Yep.
And by the way, as long as the previous supervisor brought it up, yeah, they are about 50 grand in arrears on gas, so that's gone. And if the committee doesn't get done with this until mid-January, it's a real catch-22, because Russ, I want to give you and John the time with that committee. That's a talented group. And I'm really excited, I told you, I'm excited about what they can put forward. But by the time they get it done, and you put it in front of Nequal's, because that's first, the Nequal's board has to say, yes, we're good with this, so you can then come over and show it to us. If they don't approve it, we're out 60 grand tonight, and potentially out 50 grand in January. I don't know how, that's on our record.
Yep.
And that's a problem to me for this board, when we know that. So, sophisticated, did they wait us out and they beat me because they got the money without any changes, even though I have consistently said, you can't get any money, a blank check, without changes. I want to make sure we can talk, well, but this will give them what? That's what it is. I just want to make sure this board understands that. The Nequal's board understands that. The people here that support Nequal's. I'm very excited about that committee. And I'll tell you something, Russ, and you and I have talked about this. I would say, as a betting man, the organization, the entity, the leadership that would potentially shoot down your committee, your talented committee's findings and recommendations, is the Nequal's board, in my opinion, more than this town board. And unfortunately, sequentially, it's got to go to them first. So, that's all I got to say. And it was a lot.
Key up the resolution or no?
I'm not going to do up the resolution.
Well, then I will make the motion to consider providing $60,000 emergency funding to Northeast Quadrant Advanced Life Support details, the current EMS provider for Webster EMS.
No second, dies. It dies. Let it die. Let it die. No second. Staring at her. Yeah.
Charlie, 4 years in, this is the first time, I mean, I don't, how does that work?
Wait a minute, there's no second, it dies. There's no second, it dies.
You have to second.
There is no second, it dies.
That's what I would have assumed, but I always make sure.
No, that's correct. Or second, doesn't do a second.
It died.
Bill, I heard what you said about, you've been on this board for however many years, you've been involved in this since we've kept you late at night, and occasions last year, executive sessions and stuff. In a lot of ways, I'd love to have this all tied up by your last meeting next week. To me, and I'm kind of just, like I said, I've given this a lot of thought. How many people are on that committee that are at equals? How many people are on that committee that are at equals? How many work or board members at equals of the 12?
Just one.
How many people work at equals or are on the board of equals on the 12-person committee?
Mike's on the board.
Mike Pope,
Matt.
Matt Lloyd, that's an employee. I don't think he's on the board, but if he is, that's fine. Sue
Sue
Gabassi,
and Matt are not on the board.
Yeah, but they're employees.
They're
employees.
employees, right. That
Okay,
is correct.
so associated with equals, are there 3 out of the 12?
Yeah.
Okay? A lot of equals board members here, huh?
Exactly. And a lot of us are volunteers.
No, that's not where I was going. On May 11th, you got together and did a resolution and gave it to the town that basically gave your terms of wanting 50 grand a month with no changes. Do you think in the next week that your board could get together and give us a resolution from an equals board that essentially is giving us the comfort level that the board has done a resolution of equals, that they're going to accept the committee's recommendations? And basically, I think there might, and we know what 2 of them are. Well, Bill, I'm just saying, we could vote on this on the 21st. If the equals board gives us a resolution that basically says we are going to do the recommendations, we're going to go along with the recommendations of that committee.
No board's gonna make that decision without having the information in front of them.
Well, then.
I wouldn't.
Then you know what you should do?
Yeah.
Well, you might not be as sophisticated or tone deaf as that. We don't know which one it is, all right? So I'll make it easier for you. Do the 2 specific ones that you know what they are. There's gotta be a change of leadership at the top. You gotta get rid of the Richmond contract. I don't want to hear any more talk about it. And if you want to walk out and say, here's a guy who doesn't know EMS, if you can't spell it, spotting the E and the M. I know business. And I trust that guy over there who did the math. Those, you're not going to show up here, Russ, with a presentation, ops, business, and whatever, that doesn't have those 2 in it. I think we know that, right? So why pussyfoot around this with an equals board? Make it specific to at least these 2 things are going to be in there. Will the board of equals agree to it? And if they don't, well then, I feel very good about the fact that we now have either flushed out the sophistication or whatever, but we're not going to be left being the duped $110,000 of money in the next 2 months. 60 grand from a resolution now, and the 50 grand from the 2024 budget.
Don't forget to throw in the payments for fuel.
That's gone. If they go out of business, like their attorney said, they would, and file their 30-day notice, I mean, they're insolvent. We're not going to get that money.
No.
Can't believe it's stone.
No, we're still off 160.
Right.
Yes.
So, I don't know what to tell you. I'm trying to give resolutions here, no pun intended. Councilman Cahill made a motion, nobody else backed it. I think that means there is no motion for 60,000 tonight.
That's correct.
You can walk out of here angry, Flaherty's a jerk, this and that. That's an option. Or you can take what I just said as a way to get back in here by the 21st and get another vote for that 60,000. I don't know if the other board members feel the way I articulate, that I'm concerned, and I'm being redundant, we give them the 60 grand and there's no changes. I think in a month, Russ, you're gonna be sitting there, you got this great presentation, ops plan, business plan, funding plan for the town. You go to the Nequals board and they'll say, no, we're not gonna agree to that, and that. And then it never gets to the board. And then what do we do?
Let's make no mistake about it. These two topics, requests, whatever you want to call them, has been communicated repeatedly by me, for one. Okay? So
Yes, it
this
has.
comes as no surprise,
No.
nor should it come as no
Yeah.
surprise.
Well, it's either a very sophisticated negotiation tactic, or it's tone deaf, delusional, overplaying hand. I don't know which one it is. Don't need to